Hello, good morning. A very warm welcome to our second FIDA webinar that we are presenting together with Affinity. Today we will be looking at the legal framework for new business models. We will also be discussing two use cases to give you a little bit a better idea on what's in it in FIDA for the market. Yeah, and to make it a bit more concrete than just talking about the legal side. So for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Verena Ritter-Döring. I'm a partner here at Taylor Wessing, and I'm also heading the financial regulatory group in Germany. And I'm here today together with Charlotte. Charlotte is in my team, and Charlotte is also very fond of regulatory law. And it is not so often, so we get lots of regulation from the EU, but it is not so often that we get really exciting regulation, which really fosters digital innovation, as it is the case with FIDA. And I'm very, very happy that we are joined today by Linda. Linda is Director of Growth, which is a very cool title, I think, at Affinity. For all of you who you don't know what Affinity is an IT company that empowers organizations to run their own API marketplace, and Linda, in her role, also supports companies and financial institutions and insurance companies on how to drive innovation with APIs. And you will get a very good idea in the next 45 to 50 minutes how much on FIDA depends on APIs. So we are very happy to have you here with us today, Linda. So some organizational remarks. As always, you can ask questions during our webinar, and please take part. This is for you, and it would be good if you can take home most of what is relevant for you. So there is a little rider on your right-hand side which says questions. The questions will be anonymous, and only we will see your questions. So please feel free to use this. We have already included a few polls to get to know your ideas and your needs to understand it better. So once it comes up here on the screen, please participate. And also, as always, you will get an email after the webinar with a link to the recording of this webinar. And if you also want our slides, just reach out to us and we will send it to you. Okay. So this I've already done, but you can see us in live. So let's start a little bit with the legal framework of FIDA. So I suspect everyone who's here in this webinar knows FIDA already. It's on the market as a draft regulation since June 2023, so for over a year. It was published together with the draft of PSD3 and PSR, which is also nice, and we've waited for this quite a long time, but it's not as exciting as PSD3. So with the financial data access regulation, we now will get a framework for controlled and consent-based sharing of financial data. So we got a first idea what this can mean when PSD2 introduced the open banking space, and it took quite a while for the market to catch up with the regulation, but now open banking is a very successful feature under the regulation for the payment markets. So we still have only a draft. We know there is a lot of discussion on the legislator side, or has been at least before the election, but we are still waiting for the final text. So due to the election and also other more pressing issues in the EU, we would expect to get the first draft probably in the first quarter of next year. If we are very lucky before Christmas, but I would realistically say probably early next year. And then entry into force for most of the rules in FIDA will be 24 months after entry into force, and this is a very ambitious timeline. You will see once we go through our slide, it's not just a regulatory setup, but it requires a lot of implementation, the preparation for sharing of financial data will very likely need more than 24 months time. A step-by-step approach is being discussed as well on a European level. So we probably get a new draft or the final text, depends how long it will take, and then we will see. But the legislator is aware at least that the 24 months and 18 months for some issues that are not so complicated, yeah, they are aware that this is really an ambitious timeline. So 24 months is what is the timeline for nearly all regulation that comes from Europe. So it's a standard thing, and maybe they will enhance it to give the market a little bit more time to prepare. So and here we have just we are just showing the main issues. So it's about data sharing. It's enhancing open banking to open finance. We will have now a data sharing framework beyond payment accounts. Yeah, this will be a more holistic approach for the customer, so that the customer can much better manage their data and also their financial activity and financial investing in the financial market. And yeah, so the idea of the legislator, I mean, we usually look on it from a perspective of the market players itself. So we are talking to regulated institutions, we are talking to FinTechs, but the approach from the legislator actually is looking at the customer and to give the customer more control of their financial data, also to increase the quality of data sharing, and also to encourage the introduction of new market players into the financial market. So we are looking hopefully at more data-driven and more cost-effective business models in the future. So this is about the data sharing. But then we have data owners, so that are the regulated entities who will need to share their data. We have data users. They will be the platforms where the data, where the customer can make use of the data. And because it's all very sensitive data and personal data of the customers, the data users will need to become authorized as financial information service providers, or FISP. And this also will foster the security of the data, will also make the customers more secure in data sharing. So, and since this is not enough, we also will have some financial data sharing scheme, or several financial data sharing schemes, which will set sorry, a market-based scheme for this whole data sharing. So they will be in charge of the remuneration, of the standards. They will have memberships consistent of the data owners and the data users. So they will basically be the ones regulating the market from within. So, and this will all give drive for digital innovation, as you will see in the next 40 minutes. So, and I will hand over to Charlotte now.
So the second chapter contains a bit more technical slides, but we will try to explain it in a digestive view, so we can have a broad perspective of FIDA. So the first slide is about the scope of application and the specific financial data that can be shared under FIDA. In the scope of application are all customer data stemming from, for example, credit agreements or credit accounts, and data from savings, from assets in crypto assets, from real estate assets, and also data from suitability assessment under second financial directive and the ESG assessment, and the customer data that can be shared under FIDA also includes data from occupational pension schemes. It also includes data from insurance data, for example, car insurance data, and the data also includes data that is collected as part of the credit application process. Data that is excluded from the scope of application are data regarding the payment account of the customer. So these payment account data is already included in the PSD2, and I think we have a slide later on PSD2 and open banking space. And also outside this scope of application is data from sensitive insurance areas, for example, health insurance data. So this slide, I think, provides a quite broad overview of the financial data that can be shared under FIDA. The next slide details the structures for sharing the financial data under FIDA. And FIDA differentiates between two structures. The first structure is a two-party structure, and the second structure is a three-party structure. Under the two-party structure, the customer itself can request access to the financial data of the customer. And in the three-party structure, an second institution can ask for access to the customer data, and of course, sharing the financial data of the customer is subject to the customer agreeing to such sharing of the financial data. And in order to help the customer regarding its agreements, FIDA requires financial institutions to provide the customer a customer dashboard. So the idea of the dashboard is to give the customer a specific tool, and under this dashboard, the customer can access its agreement, he or her can change its agreement, and he or her can also terminate the agreement he has issued for sharing the financial data. Yeah, and I think this tool reflects the idea of FIDA that it's trying to help to ensure customer trust in sharing quite sensitive data, obviously. So I think that's it already for the dashboard. And I'm handing over to Linda.
Thank you, Charlotte, and also welcome from my side. So we had already a very good look on the data, which is in the scope, but let's go one level deeper and have a look which data can be shared along the value chain of a financial institution. So we have, or let's start with like product information. There can be several data can be shared here. For example, the type of the product, additional services which are included in the product, the rates of a product, and so on. Also, what is very relevant, I think, for everyone is the customer data, like the name, date of birth, address, like the marriage status, things like that. And then there is like underwriting and risk management, and this has also some relevant data which can be shared to this regulation. So basically every related data which is necessary for the underwriting process or the risk scoring can be also shared here. And then last but not least, it's like data about claims. So the number of claims, the type of claims, the coverage, and so on, which means basically that like all the information other financial institutions or third-party provider can access will like give like a very good overview or like information about the customer, which can then be reused for some use cases we will jump into in a second. But the problem at the moment is that it is almost impossible to get access to this data, or let's say it's very limited. And this is also a reason why FIDA was set it up, because, and that's what Verena said in the beginning, it is about driving innovation, and it's like about the customer and give him the control and the decision about his data.
Okay, and here we have a slide because the safeguarding of the customer's data is really crucial for FIDA, because if the customer has no trust in this new FIDA scheme, then it will not work. So and this is why we included, before we dive into the use cases, to give you an overview what this means from a customer perspective. So there are, so these are only some of the obligations we have for data holders. So data holders meaning the regulated entities that hold the data that can be shared here. So asset management companies, insurance companies, banks for credit information. So we need in the end a common format, and we need the same quality of data. So this is also something the data holders need to comply with before FIDA can even start. And this is one example why these 24 months are really very ambitious. So secure communication needs to be established with the data user, so the platforms who will manage the data and make it more accessible for the user, so for the customer. So there we need IT infrastructure. We need APIs that work as a standardized setup. That was a huge problem under the open banking regulation, but in the banking space we now already have this. So we don't start from scratch here this time. We need a management how to get customer consent for the data sharing. And this needs to be, and this is the last point, completely in line with GDPR all over Europe. So that does not make it easier, but it also gives the customer a sense of trustworthiness of the entities involved. And as Charlotte said, we also need this customer dashboard so that the customer will get an overview so that they can monitor and manage all the access authorizations. So this will basically be part of an app or of an online application that the user can use. And it would also be good if this will be a standardized product. So if it contains insurance data and asset management data, it still needs to fit. And ideally also with a bank, so that the customer does not have 3 or 4 customer dashboards if he's very active in the financial market. So you can already see the challenges, but hopefully also the opportunities under FIDA. So the data users, that will be the FISPs. They will need to become authorized. I can very shortly tell you what this means. So it will be an authorization. That means the organizational setup of the FISP needs to be in line with the regulatory setup. So I'm sorry. So we need a risk management, a compliance function, an internal audit function. We need directors who are qualified to actually do the job. We need some reporting issues. So it's not that hard to fulfill all this, but it's a burden in setting it up and also maintaining it. But on the other hand, if you look at the sensitive data such a FISP is dealing with, it actually makes sense to have them authorized. It also will feature or will pay into the trust of the whole setup. So enough from a legal perspective.
Yeah, and as Verena already said, in the financial industries, I think there are several challenges when it comes to data sharing or exchange. And I want to go over some of the challenges we have identified there. So I think, and I mentioned that already, the biggest hurdle is to get access to the data. So there are several reasons behind that. Sometimes it's because there is no way of data sharing, or like financial institutions are afraid that they lose their customers if they share data with third-party providers, things like this. But another challenge is also that when data is, for example, shared, usually it involves manual work. So there are very rare processes or even APIs which allow structured real-time data exchange between financial institutions. Also, like the exchange of structured data is a challenge, because basically every company makes their own decision how they structure the data and how they manage them internally. So there are no standards in between the industries which allow a structured data sharing. There are some examples, so I don't want to say that it not exists. So if we look in the insurance industry, for example, the GDW or BPRO, they have established data standards and support the financial institutions on their way there. But what will happen if like an insurer need or wants to share data with a bank, for example. It will probably mean that the standards will not be aligned. Also on a customer level, financial institutions struggle like with offering a good user experience. So what does it mean? Often it's not possible for a customer to get proper access to their data because they own, like, the financial institution only provides like letters or summaries about what is going on, and then you get them once per year. So you somehow lose track what's actually going on, or that you have even closed a financial product. Since the data is mostly not well structured or stored in different systems, it's like hard for financial institutions to upsell products because systems are not connected, and sometimes they don't know what important life events happens from a customer, so they cannot use this data to upselling. And I think this is why FIDA is like a really good opportunity for financial institutions to use the data of their customer, offer better and personalized products to their customers. We will have now a deeper look. I already talked about the customer side a bit. What are the challenges of a customer? So switching sides, if I think about myself, I have like several financial products and providers. So I have 2 bank accounts. I have like an online brokerage, which is from another financial institution. And as a typical German, I have like several insurance for my car, my liability for travel, and so on. And of course, everything is from a different provider. So it's like I have like different types of access for my data using different channels. So some providers or like financial institutions offer like a portal, some have like a mobile application, for some I only have like a paper contract. So it's like really hard for me to have a good overview about everything I have. And I think from a customer perspective, it's pretty challenging, especially if I think of like the younger generation, which basically manage their whole life in their smartphone. For this reason, I think also here FIDA is like also really helpful for the customer to access their data and have the control of their data. That brings us to our first use case. So, I mean, this is like really an idea, and it's also what we have seen in other markets which have open finance and banking already established. But a use case we could imagine, and which could be driven by the FIDA regulation, is basically an application where customers can see all their financial products. So that means that they would not just see their like one bank account, they would see all their bank accounts, they would see the brokerage, the insurance they have, which would have already the benefit that people have an overview about their products, right? So if we look in other markets, let's look to Asia, which has applications like Alipay, for example. They have in one application a digital wallet solution. You can get micro credits or loans. You can book your travel. You get like directly a travel insurance. This is all in one application. I think in the first step here in the European market, we don't need to get that far. But I think it's a really good first step for us, offering solution where I can like see all my products and basically also get recommendations, for example, which other products could be helpful for me or could be a benefit for me as a customer. And last sentence about that. Of course, for this, we need APIs, and it's clear and it's in the regulation that without APIs and structured data, things like this cannot happen.
Exactly. And so we try to at least give a little bit of the legal framework of FIDA to the use case Linda just explained to us. So the data protection, I think that's quite clear. It's GDPR is also the Data Act that comes into application here as well for the app. As such, we have the company offering the app needs to be a FISP, as I've just explained before. So, and then we have a really complex setup from the contractual side, and I think the most important difference to banking, open banking here is that through the app itself, so the FISPs will not be able to initiate any transactions. So this is what Linda just said with Alipay. There's all in one app. So this will not in the first step happen in Europe. This is why I also included here brokering agreements, because it should be possible that if you click on a link in your app, then you come to a site where you can then initiate the transactions as that you want. So either applying for a loan or finding your insurance company and so on. So this could be done with brokering agreements. Lots of brokering activities also regulated, so either fully regulated by BaFin or at least under the trade ordinance. So credit brokering, insurance brokering, this is all very lightly only regulated by the trade ordinance in Germany, at least. So we can think about if a FISP might also get such. It's more of a registration than a license, actually. So this is something we need to take into account. Then, as also Linda said, we have several insurance companies. If we stay in the insurance space, we will have one financial data sharing scheme, ideally. So also you can, so in an ideal world, so not after the 24 months, but later on, you might also be able, if you have an insurance in France and in Germany, you might also have shown all the data in one app. Then maybe there are several financial data sharing schemes for the insurance industry in Europe will see. So also what I want to show, that from the app, from the company that offers the app, there will be lots of contractual agreements in the background with the insurance companies, with probably an IT provider, if they're not doing it itself. There will be also probably membership in the financial data sharing scheme. There will be brokering agreements with other financial players. There will also be obviously agreements with the customer, but also from the customer side, there need to be agreements with the insurance companies. If they want to make use of brokerage services, there needs to be agreement with the brokering entity as well. And all of this combined in an app, so that for the user, the experience would ideally be he registers in the app, and then he can just consent in the app, and in an ideal world also keeps the overview what he consented. So in the app there would then also be the dashboard, so that the customer will not be confused and can manage it's data consents, and also the agreements he has agreed to. So you can see this is not something a fintech can just invent. So this is something, if you want to restructure your business model and also offer a service as a data user under FIDA, there's lots and lots of things from a legal perspective to take into account. And then on top comes the IT standards, as Linda said. So we need an API standard that can be used here. We also need a data quality that that the data holder will be able to share the data. And there was one question. So the data needs to be obviously up to date. So we cannot use data that is a week old. That is in the insurance world and also in the world of loans, not as urgent as in the payment world. But if you look at the open banking and you have a payment app and you pay with your credit card, then you see in your app also, when you use Apple Pay, also you see directly that the coffee you've just paid for shows up the amount in your app. So this is something that usually happens in real time as well. And the quality of data, we will. I think it also depends on the API use, but the market needs to establish a standard for this as well, for the data that needs to be shared. And as we've shown on an earlier slide, and as Linda has explained, if you look at this whole string of data through a life of a product cycle, there's lots and lots of data from the start, from introducing the product and the customer data, keeping this up to date with address and marital status and so on. So it's not an easy task. So now I said it all. So Charlotte, you will need to do the next one.
No worries. And I think for data quality, it's important to say that there can't be discrimination. So the data that is shared has to have the same quality that the institution that collected the data has. So they can't say, oh, I'm just sharing the crap data and keep the important one. So if you share the data, you have to ensure that you share the same quality that you have internally. So this could be potentially a crucial point. I don't know how keen institutions are to really share the valuable data, but if the customer has agreed, they actually do not have a choice, but they have to ensure that the quality is the same. And I think the financial data sharing scheme helps there to ensure that the quality is consistent and defined.
There is another question, which is, are all the banks and insurance companies required to provide data to a FISP, or is this voluntary? I don't know if you, Rena or Charlotte, want to answer on that.
If the customer has asked for it and has agreed to, it's an obligation to share. So then it's not a choice you have. If the customer has asked its institution or insurance company, please share the data, it has to be shared. So the customer has all the power now for its financial data. And I think this is the key idea of FIDA, to really give the customer the power to decide to share the data. Because if the institution has the choice, it probably will not get shared because it's valuable for the institution to keep the customer data. So I think there's a shift in power under FIDA regarding controlling the data.
Exactly. And there's another question I want to answer, because it's also, when we go to the next use case, I think it's crucial to understand. When I said, like the Alipay example, that we cannot have all in one app. This is because if you offer a credit or a loan to a customer or to a company, this is a regulated activity in Europe. So everyone can give a loan. So you need to be a bank, you need to be licensed, and the platform offering the app is not licensed as a bank. I mean, they could be a business model for banks as well. Probably will not be, but it's possible. And also brokering investments is also regulated activity. So this can also not be done by the FISP. There will be probably white label products where the regulated entity is in the background and lends his license to the platform or to the app. There are business models out there, but they are very, very complex. And we can maybe in next webinar we can look at a very complex one. But in Europe, because everything is regulated in itself, and for different entities, also the insurance companies have their own regulations. So you cannot, as a FISP, just offer an insurance product. You can broker it. This is what I meant. You can broker it, but you cannot. It will not be that you just click and then you have your insurance contract. This is not what it will be in Europe. This is not our regulatory framework. Okay, but just let's carry on to our next use case.
Before we carry on to the next use case, there is another question. I think it's an interesting one. So it's about APIs and how to provide data. Can be very complex, right? And involve like a lot of effort for the financial institutions. That's right. And I think that's also what some financial institutions are afraid of when it comes to FIDA. And there are already like a lot of discussions going on how the financial institution can manage that. And I think it will be very different. It will be handled very different for like insurance or finance or even different countries. So I think, for example, Germany, there will be associations which will probably kind of define those standards and then basically support the financial institutions on their way. But of course, like all the consultant companies out there will support their customers and financial institutions to build those APIs and structure the data. So I think for financial institutions, it can be a lot of work, completely depending on the infrastructure and API setup they have at the moment. But we also have some customers which are pretty far with that, and for them it can be super easy. Okay, we have only 14 minutes left, but I think we can quickly jump into the next case, and this is about like a pension app or a dashboard, which was, by the way, also the example which the European Commission gave. So let's imagine there is this state pension basically everyone in Germany gets, and then you maybe have another pension product which is offered by the company you are working for. That means you have already 2 products on that. But of course, it's a bit the same as in the first use case. The state pension will be provided once per year, right? You all get this letter which says, okay, this is what you get when you retire. And then it's probably the same for the company pension. It would be super cool and super helpful for a customer to see like everything in one app. Or like a portal, and then you can maybe also add like the saving plans you have closed on a private level, and then really see your savings growing and knowing, you know, if I'm 65 or 67, this is what I get out, and this is the money I will have to cover my livings. And I think those use cases are real. And so at least if I think about myself, there have been a time where I had no clue how much money I will have when I retire, and I was starting to think, okay, what do I need to do to save some money? But it was very painful for me to get an overview, because I needed to look in the letters, I needed to check what are the conditions, and then think about and make a research. Okay, what product do I want to add basically to my portfolio to be safe. And so it's at least what I think for me it would be, or would have been, very helpful to have like a better and digital overview, where I also maybe get recommendations what could be a good product, or where I could see like what is the difference between the products and so on.
Yeah, I think we can keep this slide rather brief. It's basically the same than the legal framework slide we have already talked about. So you have to ensure data protection. It's the key requirement. You have to ensure that the entity that accesses the financial data is authorized to do so. So you have to apply for a license to become a FIS, and you have to ensure that your contractual setup is compliant. You probably need a cooperation agreement with the IT service provider. You probably need cooperations agreement between the pension scheme sharing the financial data, and you have to have a cooperation agreement with the customer, and you probably can include the terms and conditions that apply to the customer in the app to make user experience for the customer as great as possible. But yeah, it's basically the same that we have already talked about. So we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, maybe one, because it's also a question. It's currently discussed if the data sharing will also be possible without data sharing schemes as part of the legislation process. Yeah, might be, but I think we probably in the end we will have data sharing schemes because it proved really useful for the open banking. Also for the open banking, it was just were only the banks, and now we need it for insurance, we need it for asset management, so for the depository banks, we need it for the lending banks as well. So we will see how this will develop in 24 months. So probably it will take a bit longer, but yes. So let's carry on in the interest of time.
There is another question which is about the use case, and the question is basically, what do we suggest where to have such a product in the banking app, or will there be other apps? So I think there's no clear answer on that yet, but I think providers like finance gurus or providers which offer already overviews of like financial products will probably use the opportunity to expand their portfolio and their offering. So that could be first movers using this regulation. But I also assume that there are new players coming up which will also take the chance and provide completely new offerings there. So yeah, I think we talked already what's in a bit for the customer, but we think it's also important to yeah, basically have a look what's in for financial institutions and third-party providers, since those are the players which will make the biggest invest, right? And I think there are several benefits of this regulation. So I think if data will be shared in a standardized way, it will be definitely reduce manual effort and enhance operational efficiency for every financial institution or even third-party provider being in this field. And I think it's all clear that the more data we have, or like financial institution has about a customer, the better they can calculate also risk, make personalized offering, upsell their products. So you can also see it the other way around, that financial institutions can also benefit because they could also get more data. And last but not least, it's also a huge opportunity to drive innovation in the financial landscape and allow new business models. And I think it's the decision of every financial institution or third-party provider to see FIDA as an opportunity instead of a threat. And yeah, I mean, there are also like some downsides. So, I mean, providing like a lot of data or customer specific data, it's also very attractive for cybercrime. But I think with the regulation, or the regulation takes also good care of the security of the data. the flexibility or like the loyalty of a customer can be reduced, because now he has a better overview. So maybe some customers will even do more product hopping. And yeah, of course, we assume that there will be like a higher level of competition.
Okay, we've already talked a lot about this on the side. So we will, in the beginning, the resistance in the banking sector when open banking came was really, really huge. And now it's a well-going sector in the payment space. So this is the same, will be the same here. There will be players in the market who say it's so difficult to share the data. We do not really have the data in the right form. So there will be resistance. But as Charlotte explained earlier, it's, they will have, there's an obligation to share the data. I think we will see new products. We will see digital innovation. We will see a lot of use cases, new use cases in the market. We will also have a secure framework for data sharing. I mean, we are working on this data sharing framework, not only in the financial sector, but also in other sectors like health, energy, and so on. So this will become part of the EU DNA in the future. The benefits for the customer we've already mentioned. So I think we can keep this brief, and I think this is anyway our last slide. And just to summarize, if you are now a data holder, or if you want to become a data user, I think the first thing is, what data do I have, or what data do I need? Analyze your business model for opportunities. There's lots of discussions going on, also online, also at nearly every FinTech conference that is on at the moment. Observe the legislative process. There's also going on a lot at the moment, and we don't have the final text yet. So there's also time still for lobbying, and lobbying is also going on big time. You also need to understand your IT. You need to understand how your IT infrastructure works and what APIs do I need. What are the standards? There's also going on a lot of discussion in the market. Find like-minded people, find associations to discuss this with. I think this will help a lot. And think big. I think it's really a lot of room for innovation in FIDA. It's a lot of opportunity. Yes, it's not all easy, and it does not come served on a silver tablet, but it is nearly served on a silver tablet. So there's really lots of room for growth in this for the financial market and the data holders, as well as for data users. Okay, we are at the end. Thank you so much for everyone who attended and who asked questions. Here now we have a poll. That's cool. If you want to do this, we can also share the the votes in our email that we will circulate afterwards. So currently on place 1 are the differences and synergies between FIDA and the EU Data Act. Yes, I think this is a topic we will address in November. We are planning a FIDA conference in November. You will all get invites in your since you're on our email list, and this will be there will be something on the EU Data Act, because it's a very important topic as well, but hard to cover in just an hour. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Charlotte and Linda. for taking part in our webinar. The hour went so quickly. So I'm sure we will talk again in such a setting. Yeah, and have a nice afternoon and a nice rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Bye.